So sesamin, you've probably seen it in supplements, heard it mentioned in health circles, maybe even noticed it on the back of your sesame oil bottle. But what actually happens if you take this stuff every day? And more importantly, should you? I spent the last few weeks diving into the actual science, the clinical trials, the data that researchers have been quietly publishing about this compound. And honestly, some of what I found surprised me. So let's talk about what sesamin really does to your body when you take it consistently, backed by actual medical studies, not just marketing claims. First, let's get clear on what we're even talking about here. Sesamin is a lignan, which is basically a type of plant compound found primarily in sesame seeds and sesame oil. It's been used in traditional medicine for centuries, particularly in Asian cultures, but Western science only started seriously investigating it in the last couple decades. And what they found is pretty interesting. The first thing that caught my attention was the research on liver health. Now, I know liver health doesn't sound sexy, but stay with me because this matters more than you might think. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that sesamin significantly increased the activity of certain liver enzymes that are responsible for fat metabolism. What does that actually mean for you? Well, your liver is essentially your body's processing plant. When it's functioning better, everything downstream works more efficiently. But here's where it gets more specific. Researchers at Tohoku University in Japan conducted a study where participants took 60 milligrams of sesamin daily for 4 weeks. They found that it reduced serum levels of certain liver enzymes, ALT and gamma-GTP, which are markers of liver stress. The reduction was around 10 to 15% on average. That might not sound dramatic, but for people dealing with fatty liver disease or just general metabolic stress, that's actually clinically significant. Now let's talk about something that probably interests most of you, watching this fat metabolism and body composition. There's been some buzz about sesamin being a fat loss supplement, and I wanted to see if that held up under scrutiny. A study in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed 26 postmenopausal women who took sesamin for 5 weeks. The researchers found something pretty compelling. The women experienced a significant increase in fat oxidation during rest and after meals. We're talking about an increase of approximately 13% in resting fat oxidation. But before you rush out to buy sesamin thinking it's a magic fat burner, let me add some context. The same study showed that while fat oxidation increased, actual weight loss was modest and required dietary control. Sesamin seems to help your body preferentially burn fat for fuel, but it's not going to override a poor diet or sedentary lifestyle. Think of it as an optimizer, not a miracle worker. Here's something that really stood out to me. In the research, the cardiovascular effects, a clinical trial published in the Journal of Nutrition examined what happened when people consumed sesame oil rich in sesamin over 60 days. Blood pressure readings showed a notable decrease. We're talking about reductions of approximately 6 millimeters of mercury in systolic pressure and 5 millimeters of mercury in diastolic pressure. For reference, that's comparable to some mild blood pressure medications without the side effects. The mechanism here is fascinating. Sesamin appears to work through multiple pathways. It inhibits an enzyme called delta-5 desaturase, which shifts the balance of fatty acids in your body toward less inflammatory compounds. It also seems to improve endothelial function, which is basically how well your blood vessels can relax and contract. Better endothelial function means better blood flow and lower cardiovascular risk. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly interested in the real science here. So do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps get this information in front of more people who are looking for evidence-based content instead of just supplement hype. Now, let's address something that doesn't get talked about enough: oxidative stress and inflammation. A study in molecular nutrition and food research found that sesamin has potent antioxidant properties, but not in the way you might think. Unlike vitamin C or E, which directly neutralize free radicals, sesamin works more like a signaling molecule. It activates your body's own antioxidant systems, particularly something called the NRF2 pathway. What this means practically is that sesamin helps your cells produce more of their own protective enzymes, like glutathione and superoxide dismutase. In the study, markers of oxidative stress decreased by about 20% after 4 weeks of supplementation. That's significant because chronic oxidative stress is linked to everything from accelerated aging to chronic diseases. There's also emerging research on sesamin and athletic performance that I found genuinely interesting. A study with trained athletes found that those supplementing with sesamin showed improved exercise, endurance, and reduced muscle damage markers after intense training. The proposed mechanism involves better mitochondrial function, your cellular power plants, and reduced inflammatory response to exercise stress. But here's what keeps me honest about all of this: sesamin isn't perfect, and the research has limitations. Most studies use relatively small sample sizes, typically between 20 and 60 participants. The durations are often short, usually 4 to 12 weeks, and many of the studies have been conducted in Asian populations, which means we need more research on how it affects people of different genetic backgrounds. There's also the question of dosage. Most studies use between 50 and 150 milligrams per day. To put that in perspective, you'd need to eat roughly 500 grams of sesame seeds to get 150 milligrams of sesamin. That's not practical. This is where supplementation actually makes sense, if you're looking to get therapeutic amounts. One more thing worth mentioning: sesamin appears to have effects on hormone metabolism, particularly regarding estrogen. It can modulate estrogen metabolism toward less potent forms, which some researchers think might explain some of its protective effects. But this also means that people with hormone-sensitive conditions should talk to their doctor before supplementing. So what's my take after reviewing all this research? Sesamin is one of those compounds that has legitimate, measurable effects backed by peer-reviewed science. It's not going to transform your health overnight, but as part of a broader healthy lifestyle, it seems to offer genuine benefits, particularly for liver health, cardiovascular function, and managing inflammation. The people who seem to benefit most based on the research are those dealing with metabolic issues, elevated liver enzymes, high blood pressure, or chronic low-grade inflammation. If you're a healthy young person with great metabolic health, you might not notice dramatic effects. But if you're in your 30s or beyond and dealing with the typical metabolic challenges that come with aging, the research suggests sesamin might be worth considering. If you found this breakdown helpful and you want more evidence-based content on supplements that actually work versus the ones that are just marketing hype, go ahead and subscribe. I'm going through the research so you don't have to, and there's a lot more coming. The bottom line with sesamin: it's not a magic bullet, but it's also not snake oil. The science shows real measurable effects, particularly for metabolic and cardiovascular health. Just make sure you're getting it from quality sources. Stick with researched doses, and remember that no supplement replaces the fundamentals of good sleep, proper nutrition, and regular movement. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.